my name is Sammy. I am a 5/1 emotional home projector, and today I'm going to be talking to LoriAnne, who is a 3/5 sacral authority generator, and we're going to be talking specifically about sacral authority today. So if you first want to define sacral authority, LoriAnne, is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just pronounce it a little differently, sacral authority for me, and that's okay. Either pronunciation is good. So I want people to know that out there. I say sacral authority is about being extremely intuitive and knowing in your body what is the right answer, way to go, any way that you're trying to figure out or make a decision. And the interesting thing about sacral, it doesn't use a lot of your own words. It is a sound mechanism of when someone asks you the right question, that you answer with a uh-huh or a uh-uh. And it is the sound that you project that gives you the intuitive knowing that what's the right answer.
Awesome. That's such a great explanation.
Good.
Awesome. And so I want to ask after that if someone is completely new to this and they're watching that and just kind of heard that description
Yeah.
and they're just kind of like, I don't even know where to start, what would you recommend to that person?
Actually, the first thing I would recommend is because it's in your body, and so the answers are, even though we're using sound to generate the yes or the no, it's deep in your body. And so I would want you to pay attention first to when something happens. Are you vibrating? Did you get sick to your stomach? Did the hair on your neck go up? Did you get a chill? And try to observe. And I would even write down, because sacral authority is a little difficult for some people because it's not. Well, any authority is difficult if you don't have it. But if you're new to this and you really want to utilize your sacral authority, it's actually, a lot of people envy it because you can get an answer right away if you do it. So pay attention to your body, what your body responds to, and then pay attention to your intuition. And then find someone, so there are kind of 3 steps, that can ask you questions, not how questions. It's not about how, because how just breaks down and goes into the logisticals, and you really want to use your intuitive sound answers. And have someone that can ask you questions as simple like, as is your name Susan? If it's not, you're going to say do you live in Hawaii? But then they want to ask you the question, so you want to prep your body for getting answers. You want to ask the question, so are you ready to take this promotion? And you'll be surprised, even if you think it's a ha, if it comes out, you really need to pay attention to that. So you do need a partner for the difficult questions, but I've taught myself to do it myself. But I've been doing it for 4 or 5 years now. So, but you can get there, but follow those things in order, and to you new beginners, and you will get it. And it's actually the quickest authority you can have in all of human design, because it can be that quick.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I see those kind of what you explain as like the third step would be like a sacral session.
Right.
They are really beautiful to watch because you really do see that just this light bulb goes off. It's just so without even the mind being really in charge there, which I think is really beautiful
Well,
how you
yeah,
stated it too of like,
that's the key. You don't want the mind in charge. And that's why we're using sound if you're sacral authority. So you stay out of your mind and you're pulling up the intuition using sound. So,
yeah. Speaking out the mind, as far as the mind getting in the way, would you see that as probably the biggest obstacle for people to kind of overcome at the beginning? It's what I've seen the most in
yeah, we're so logistical. Sometimes when we make decisions, and if you all go in the past, you'll know that there's been a decision you've made, and logistically, you shouldn't have done it, but it ended up being the right thing for you. That's because you followed your sacral authority.
okay.
Logistics get in the way. We're not trained to understand that when we experience blocks, limiting beliefs, obstacles, that we store it in our body first, and then we logistically justify it with our mind. So now we have a reason to stay in our limiting belief, our obstacle, and not reaching our goals. And so the mind can play tricks. It becomes a beautiful thing when you're not living in limiting belief or blocks, but it doesn't happen just with the mind. You've got to come out, take it right through your body and then into the mind, and making sure that you're not living on the negative side of what you want to do for your design.
Yeah, I think that that speaks a lot of volume to anyone really, as far as
Right.
the whole limiting beliefs and feeling like you can't look within for that love that you've been like that abundance, because it's all within each of us individually as well. So
Absolutely. Got to love yourself before you can love anybody else. Got to love your
yeah,
life before you can have a great life. So,
absolutely. Yeah, and it's that internal, it's almost that immediate fear that I think stops a lot of I know it stopped me. I know it probably will again. Where no one's ever perfect at this stuff. But I find fear to be the biggest like underlying factor as to why we feel like we can't live in that abundance and in
yeah,
that love.
absolutely. Fear is the number one, and usually where fear comes from is between 0 and 7. When you're a child, if you experience any trauma, drama, or you've interpreted something as negative, your heart and mind and body don't understand, but you do create a story behind it. So even in hindsight, if it looks silly, you've taken it into adulthood, and it creates a limiting story, a limiting block, a belief, whatever. And it's not, and then you create a fear around that, because it change. You would have to head on look what happened between 0 and 7, and look at it, and really dissect it, and release it. And a lot of people can't go there, and so they would rather live in fear unconsciously, even though consciously they say, "Oh, I don't want that," but yet they repeat it over and over
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I didn't even know that. So thank you so much for sharing that. So you already kind of explained the sacral sessions a little bit ago. Is there anything on the sacral sessions that you would want to kind of point out or say? I mean, when you started doing them, did you feel like it was really uncomfortable at the beginning, or what was your experience with them?
It feels weird, because it feels kind of weird. You're asking a question. Why can't I just say yes or no? Again, it's because we're trying to get out of here. We're using, and because you are naturally intuitive, if you're sacral, you are naturally intuitive, and you have deep knowing that you want to bring to the surface, so you can make great decisions or take a path that's right for you over and over again. And so your decision making really doesn't come from the mind, it comes from your intuition. And so this sound is easier to hear, than a yes or a no, because yes or no goes too logistical, and the sound is um, in coherence with your intuition.
Ah, awesome. I love that explanation. No, yeah. And I love that you were like, it is a little weird at first, because I can imagine that of being a little awkward at first, but just like anything, and when you start human design, it is a little weird. You kind of have to play with some of the
Well, even human design, even though the first time you hear it, you don't really understand it, and it sounds weird. And I'm this, I didn't know, and until you start understanding the history of it and knowing more about information, I think anything new is weird. But one thing I will say about sacral that I don't want to forget is that. When you're a cycle generator, people get confused around the idea that you're supposed to respond, and they get those two confused. So that's one thing I do want to say. It's two separate things, but you can use your sacral to know what to respond to. So generators are supposed to respond to something they see. They don't go chase, but what it means you can use your sacral quickly and figure out what you need to respond to, and not have to wait around. And so that's one thing. It took me a while to learn that, how to use another part of my human design with my sacral to work well.
Yeah. Okay. So if I'm understanding you correctly, it's like in that moment almost you're responding in that moment by then using your authority on top of being a generator and respond.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a great key insight there because I've never actually heard anyone explain it that way. And I really, really like that because that is like a huge part of it. And it's really
Mhm.
important to get that correct. So thank you so much
Yes.
for sharing that. So if someone's feeling very disconnected with the sacral energy, or I like to call it like the compass that you all have inside, or if someone
Yeah.
feels very lost or just feels like no matter what they're doing, they can't really trust that sense of themselves. Is there
Right.
any tips or advice that you would give that person?
Yeah, so when I see that in my own practice, what I know right away is someone is disconnected from not only their body, but their heart. And so there's a little bit of heart work to do. And in terms of opening it up, a lot of people have been bruised in life and a lot of things have happened. And the first thing people protect is their heart, and they rely on their mind so much. So now you're bypassing not only your heart, and you're using your mind and you're not using your sacral. You're so only 1/3 of you is energetically working, and the
Mm,
mind is the least energetic of all. And you really want
yeah.
to use. And so what I would do is I would really look at that and be asking very simple questions. I would actually journal and just ask out loud. You don't even have to get an answer. You just say, what parts of my heart are hurt? Well, just like, who am I today? What's the greatest expression of myself today? And just start asking great, simple questions that eventually you will get an answer to. Because when you're asking questions, you're tapping into your intuition.
Yeah.
And no how questions, to your audience. How questions don't. It's what? What does it look like? What is my next step? It's always a lot of those questions. So, who can I ask? Things like that. And
Mm.
it's really important that you write that down. If you don't get an answer, you won't at first, but just keep chipping away at that, and you'll get something to work with your sacral and your and what do next.
No, I love that. And I do think that it is important that you brought up the whole heart, like the heart protection thing, and how I feel like often that's more disconnected than we even know. Um,
Right.
because I'm even with other authorities, I do feel like no matter what your chart is, I feel like there is this underlining heart, the importance and significance of your heart or your G center, and that how important it is to keep that open and authentic to who you are because it is your yeah it really is connected to every aspect of your body, and you can be so out of alignment when you're not coming from the heart and you're coming from the mind or any other place. It's just
Right.
not going to be that authentic thing that you're really searching for, which is love within as well as to give.
Absolutely. So when you're not in tune with your heart, and I'll say 90% of the world isn't, and it probably is a low number when I said that. No matter how much you know about human design, you're going to be playing your human design more on the negative side, on the negative aspects of it than the positive sides. So the heart does play a really important piece, and all of us are accessed through our heart, through our human design, all a little different depending what gates come off of the heart and the G center. And so you have to build trust within yourself and build trust with the world that you should be engaging with. Even though we've got a crazy world out there right now,
Yeah.
you can choose the less crazy route.
Yeah, and I always like to say that, like, the more light that and more love that you are putting out in the world, it can make a huge difference, way
Right,
more than we will ever know. And you have
right.
no idea what kind of act of kindness or just love that was, in your aura when you were around, how much that affected someone else. And so it just keeps
Mhm.
going on because then they could have acted from that love and then on and on and on. So it's like
Right.
a ripple effect. And it might seem like it's a small thing, but every single one of us have to do that to make that difference, right?
Absolutely.
So I love the way that you described that as well. Yeah. So, how much do you feel like how much do you feel like knowing this as far as with your authority that it helps, or sorry, with your type, that it really helped you understand being a generator?
Oh, I think, first of all, most people come to human design never hearing of it, right? I mean, it's just kind of one of those things. It's being discovered more and more. But so 5 years ago, it's like, oh, I had my design done and I didn't know what people were talking about. And I went to a conference one time, and someone that does human design had a booth in the vendor hall, and I picked up some information and I had my chart done. And so it wasn't until then that I realized, yeah, that is, once I understood the gates coming off my throat, especially, and off of my where my sacral comes off, I just like, oh, I should lean into that. And that's the first few things you start understanding that feel in alignment on the positive side. You should lean into it more, because the more you lean into who you are in human design, the more you live a calmer, peaceful, happy life. And so,
Yeah.
and you figure out how to operate and work, and certain things to delegate, because you, as a generator, I'm not going to do that. It's not my thing. I'm not a projector. I'm not a manifester. Those things, I'm not going to speak like a manifester does or a projector does.
Um,
It helps me stay in my lane, but also explore more and more of the deeper levels of being a generator.
Definitely. Yeah, I love that. And then you did touch on the gates. So that was going to kind of be my last question that I really had was as far as the gates that are activated
Right.
at Sacral Center, do you feel like that makes does that show up at all for you? Do you feel like that's a very significant aspect, like something that people with this authority should look at?
Yes, especially the complete gate. So, without having a whole discussion of what human design is, where your sacral center is in any center, what I mean by complete gates, the gate it has a throughway to your sacral center. Those ones that do that I would read about those gates, and I would make sure you're in alignment on the positive side of that, and that steers you even more in the right direction. Gates off your sacral that are complete, whether they're red and black or just red, and when you look at your chart, you'll know what I'm talking about, are real key for the sacral center.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think I had mentioned in a previous video with someone that it was kind of like those kind of make you realize your gifts in a kind of
It
beautiful
does.
way.
It's your total gifts. I have the whole marketing, making money from one to another all the way across my chart, and I was like, well, that makes sense, because I know how to market, I know how to sell,
Mhm.
and so I need to stay in my lane on that. And when I do, I make more money. So that's the other thing in my business. So when I do, I make more money, and you will too. If you stay in your lane. And when I say stay in your lane, I don't mean it in a constrictive way. So sometimes when I use that language, people think that, and I don't mean that. It helps you to be in your lane and then really explode outward with what you're here to do in the world.
Yeah, honestly, when I hear you say that, I can totally see how someone would think that about that language. But when I hear that, I think of how beautiful it is because you're able to actually truly see who, like, what your purpose is and those limitations in a positive way. So that way,
Right.
you can also have a lot of respect for people outside of that. Because I think a lot of it is also when you have true understanding and true love and trust in your design and who you are, you start to really see the beauty in everyone else because you start
Yes.
to realize how it all works together, which is even cooler.
Right. And really helps to, like, in partnerships, like who to pair up with, like, generators and projectors are good partners, as long as the parameters are defined, and they help each other be even more than who they are, and who you hire, what's missing, where you should delegate, where you should really just be the only one talking about certain things, because that is who you are.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and absolutely. And on to that, just for anyone who's watching this to say is like, there is like you can love, you can work with any I mean, I think you can really do that with any chart. It's just
Yes.
it's a beautiful tool, as you were saying, because it's like
Yes.
you can learn more about someone and respect those qualities and bring those into whatever it is they're doing in a loving and beautiful way. Um,
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. So did you have anything else that you wanted to share or you feel like someone with this authority should know? Feel free if anything pops up.
I think that the thing I just want to repeat is you get to know quicker than most other authorities, and you want to use that well. You don't want to be flippant with it, but at the same time, it can really open a path for you if you really key into your intuition and that sacral authority and find someone that because you shouldn't do it all yourself. You really do need to have sessions here and there, especially around the big things, that can ask you the right questions and that they're intuitive enough that they may think of a question that you hadn't thought about for that to ask you, and it really makes the session much more deeper and much more complete for you as a sacral authority.
Yeah. And if anyone is completely new to this, do you feel like asking just like a trusted person with these yes or no questions would be okay if they didn't know anyone? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for talking with us today about this. I feel like this is going to be so helpful for everyone who watches this.
Well, I really enjoyed it, and thank you for having me.
Of course.